right, good morning. It's so nice to see everyone. It's so nice to be back in Eugene at the Centers for Sacred Science. Thank you, Joel, for your hospitality and your guidance over the years. It's a true blessing. So Jim and I are going to, and that's Jim and I, that's not Jim and I, the sign, but Jim and I are going to speak today about the consecration of not knowing. And if you saw in the title of the talk, as Joel said, it's not, K-N-O-T, but it's also not, N-O-T, is nested within the not, K-N-O-T. So we're going to explore this play on words as if it was intentional, okay, from the great mystery. So we'll be playing with this not knowing as we go through. So this talk is going to take us on a tantric journey, and tantra means weaving that liberates. Okay, so the word itself, tantra, means weaving that liberates. Okay, and let's just start. Is anybody down in Eugene? I suspect there are. Is anybody here a weaver or had experience with weaving? Anybody make God's eyes when you were in summer camp as a kid? Yeah, a couple of things like that. Pot holders, yeah. Any other experiences with weaving?
Paper weaving.
Paper weaving, okay, great, thanks, Laura. All right, so what do you think is really important when you're weaving? What's gonna be the quality of process that's necessary when you're weaving? Any ideas?
Pay attention.
Pay attention, yeah? What else?
Just equal parts.
Equal parts, beautiful. Any other ideas? What else might be important when you're weaving? Yeah. Rhythm, okay, beautiful.
Adherence to a pattern.
Yeah, beautiful. Adherence to a pattern, okay.
Secure connection.
Ooh, a secure connection, beautiful. Okay, anything else?
The quality of touch.
The quality of touch, absolutely, absolutely. Would you hand me, let's just have this as a visual here for a sec. And so if this was what I was going to weave with, is it going to be easy to weave from here? Why?
It's tangled up.
It's tangled up. It's a mess, right?
Not.
It's knotted.
It's knotted. It's quite literally knotted, right? So if I'm going to weave, what do I need to be able to do?
Untangled.
Untangle. I need to disentangle the knot, right? In preparation, yeah, that preparation to disentangle the knot, okay? So we'll come back to our beautiful threads here a little bit later. So you really do have to be able to untangle the knots to weave easefully, right? And balanced and beautifully, okay? So we are going to be disentangling knots in this exploration today, or beginning to disentangle knots. And within the not knowing, okay? The knots of knowing. So there are going to be three primary threads that we're going to disentangle.
So first we will be disentangling the thread that's knotted with not knowing who we really are. Then we will also be disentangling the thread that is knotted with not recognizing that there is a continuum that includes all of us and that we are all together in this continuum. And then thirdly, we will be disentangling the thread that is knotted with a sense of individual doership, independent, I'm the one who's doing this, you're doing that, we are completely separate, and I'm, that sense of I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. So those are the three threads that we will be disentangling in this journey.
And as these threads are disentangled, okay, what we begin to discover is that these threads then weave to create the jewels of Indra's net. That it is this weaving that creates the jewels of Indra's net.
And the Indra's net will become clear by the end.
Okay. And so this is the consecration, right? This is the consecration of not knowing. So this, first of all, this first knot of not knowing is going to be unraveling the knot of not knowing, not recognizing who and what we really are. This foundational truth of who and what we are. So this is this first knot that we're going to be exploring the unraveling of. And this exploration to know thyself, right, to really know who and what you are, is at the foundation of all the great wisdom traditions, okay, across time and across locale. So we'll see on this first slide is an inscription from the Delphi temple of Apollo, and it says, know thyself. Know thyself.
And then we know from Gautama the Buddha, be a lamp unto yourself, another way of giving the same teaching.
And then Lao Tzu puts it this way: whoever knows others is wise, but whoever knows themselves is enlightened.
And then from Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas, whoever knows all but fails to know themselves misses everything.
And then attributed to Mary Magdalene, and this is the relic of her skull, actually. Be on your guard so that no one deceives you by saying, look over here or look over there, for the child of God already exists within you.
And then the Prophet Muhammad, whoever knows themselves knows the Lord.
And then the Baal Shem Tov, the ideal of a human being is to be a revelation oneself, maybe a revolution too, a revelation oneself, clearly to recognize oneself as a manifestation of God.
And then Bhagavan Nityananda, a great teacher in our lineage, the heart is the hub of all sacred places. Go there in Rome.
And then Anandamayama, either melt by devotion, the sense of separateness, or burn it by knowledge. What will happen then? You come to know yourself. So this invitation to know thyself is deeply, deeply revered across time, across space, across expression.
And all of these wisdom traditions agree that the primary cause of human psychological suffering is our ignorance of this truth, what's termed in Sanskrit ajnana, ignorance, not knowing.
And the alleviation of this suffering, the psychological suffering, is deep knowledge of oneself, which is in Sanskrit jnana, knowledge. And it has the same root as gnosis, right? The Greek word gnosis.
And the philosophical tradition of Kashmir Shaivism describes what binds us, the knots, in terms of three impurities that cover over and kind of tangle up our experience. So the first is what's termed Anava, the knot of I am just this person, this separate individual person cut off from everyone and everything. I'm isolated, I'm separate. I'm caught in this. I'm tightly knotted in my personal identification.
And in this tightly wound knot of I am this, I am only this, right? And we feel cut off. We probably all recognize that there are circumstances within which that knot shows itself. Like, when do you see that knot in you most clearly? That, like, I am this person. Anybody willing to name that? When do you feel that or see that most clearly?
When there's fear,
When there's fear? Yeah, beautiful. What else?
When I feel a knot in my belly.
When you feel a knot in your belly, yeah. Things lock in, don't they? I am this person. What else?
Contradicts or sees differently.
Beautiful. When you're attached to a belief, right? And that's different from how somebody else sees. Like, that view is not my view. Right? It'll lock in then, doesn't it? Of course it does. Anything else? But when you recognize this mala, this covering, this knottiness, that I am only this person. Yeah. Absolutely. When you're judging other people, right? I am this, that is that, and I don't like that. Right? Judgment. Is it-
Or perhaps, I really like that, I wish I was that.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah, when you're praised, yeah, the sense of ego, like, right, pride. Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So we all see these patterns that arise spontaneously, and when these patterns arise spontaneously, the sense of I am this person, it locks in, doesn't it? Right? It becomes reified, concretized. It feels real. We look separate. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So even how we see a thing visually, distinction, boundary, separate. The whole perceptual mechanism begins to orient towards not me. Right?
And then that actually, well, is there
ahead.
more? So that actually leads to the next, that statement really leads to the next mala, which is Maya mala. So Maya, it comes from the word Maya, to measure out things is different and separate. And this is the knot of perceiving everything. Not only am I cut off and separate, but everything else is separate and different from each other. Everything, we're all just a bunch of isolated units, all with so many limits and boundaries.
And do we see that in ourselves too? When that veiling, that knot arises? Yeah. Separateness, different, distinction. And then the third mala, the third covering, is the karma mala. And the karma mala is this knot, the knottiness of belief that I am the doer, that I'm doing all this, that I'm in charge, I'm in control.
And I'm the one who has to fix it all.
And I'm the one who has to fix it all, right? The subsequent.
But it's not my fault.
But it's not my
That
fault.
also,
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
That would be the access, more like the first of the malas, the sense of I'm only this over here. So yeah. So our upbringing, our education, and even our religious training in this culture that we live in is pretty much absent of any message to us that we are something much greater than just our individual self, right? This isn't our cultural upbringing to learn this and explore this possibility. Otherwise, we just feel like I'm just this individual, this mind, this body, this personality.
So we're ignorant of this broader reality of what we are, right? We're overlooking it, we're ignoring it. We have ignorance of it. But we're also ignoring this true sense of true nature. Like, even if when we have a glimpse, we have a recognition, right? We have the opening, like, we have those moments. Like, they've done these amazing trials, really, like, how many people, like, actually have those unified mystical experiences? A lot of people have them. But then it just gets clouded right back over, doesn't it? Right? We ignore it. We don't value it. We don't center it. It just gets ignored, overlooked. And we're doing that all the time also, right? And so this secondary cause of suffering is really overlooking what is otherwise completely obvious. We're just overlooking it. We're ignoring it. All right? It's not dissimilar from Plato's cave. right? You have somebody that's bound up. I was earlier, they're trying to use this microphone, and all of a sudden this wire was like bounding me up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to find myself in Plato's cave very quickly. So, but you're in the cave, right? And you're chained in the cave. You're bound in the cave. And you're looking at the back of the wall, and what do you see? You see just the shadows. Right? But what doesn't happen is the remembrance to look back to the sun that is illumining and creating the shadow. Right? So we're just ignoring. We're overlooking. We're overlooking.
Another analogy for this is a young boy is taken to the movies by his father, and he loves watching everything in the movie, but he fails to see the screen. He doesn't recognize the screen. It's all these things moving about, but what is it moving about on or within that screen?
So what we'd like to do is to explore just a couple of little practices to just explore this tendency that we have to overlook, to ignore, because it's happening all the time. It's happening all the time. And the first little exercise we'd like to invite is just recognizing, so you hear my voice, right? You hear the sound of this voice. Hopefully it's relatively clear, right? But behind the sound of this voice is silence. So even as the sound emerges, the silence is still here. But we tend to center the sound. We don't notice the silence. Right? We also tend to center sensation. Right? But then sensation might vanish. Let's say you have an itch on your nose, and it'll absolutely call your attention. Right? The sensation gets centered. And then the sensation disappears, and we overlook the stillness. So in our direct experience, over and over and over again, we center activity, and we overlook stillness. We overlook silence. We overlook the emptiness.
And one of the primary writings of the Kashmir Shaivite tradition is the Shiva Sutras. And the very first Shiva Sutra says, Chaitanyam Atma. Oneself is consciousness. Our very nature, what we are, is consciousness itself. So see if you can let those words land for you right now. That you are consciousness in this very moment. Is there anything that you're experiencing right now that is not within this sphere of consciousness that you're experiencing? Is anything outside of consciousness in this moment that you actually know about, that you can ascertain? Has there ever been anything that you have known or experienced that wasn't known because you are consciousness? Including in the dream state. Or the deep rest of deep sleep. Waking, dreaming, or deep sleep. Consciousness is the context for all that we experience. So that's something we tend to overlook almost all the time.
This right here, which is observing any number of thoughts arising. Right here, super simple, just overlooked. So in the Chandogya Upanishad, it's described this way: that which glows in the depths of your eyes. that which glows in the depths of your eyes, that is the fundamental reality. That is the self of yourself. That is the beautiful one, the luminous one. It's from the Chandogya Upanishad.
And when we have even a glimpse of direct experience of our self as consciousness, as awareness, as living presence, rather than overlooking that and being habitually identified with, I am just this person, then immediately there's a sense of liberation, of freedom, of being freed up from a contraction and a sense of being cut off, a suffering that's totally unnecessary. And then we begin to realize that we actually have the opportunity to live life from that experience and to live life compassionately, knowing that this is the lot of us all that we keep overlooking and missing out on what we already have.
And again, as a process of investigation, right? This which shines in the depths of your eyes, this which illumines every thought, this which perceives every sound, is there any limit to it? Can you find an edge that is not defined by your thinking mind? Or is it in fact spacious, open, already free? As Van Morrison said, a dweller at the threshold. Open, spacious, already free.